Hi, folks. It's time for our Unclear on the Concept clip. And here it is.
John had decided to leave his fortune to Robbie the robot.
Okay, Rikko, any thoughts?
Well, Robbie the robot's probably more wealthy than you and I combined.
Yeah, great. Now even the robots are doing better than us. Well, I think Robbie has better posture than we do. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the intro. So here we go, folks.
Welcome to The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, Professor of Computer Science at the University of St. Thomas. In each lively 25-minute episode, Mark and producer Rikko Smart dive into topics shaping our world, featuring expert interviews and engaging live audience participation. Discover groundbreaking ideas for the future and timeless wisdom you can't afford to forget, all infused with humor and charm. Leave every episode feeling inspired, informed, and optimistic about what lies ahead. For more bragging about this show, go to theprofessorislive.com.
And that's our intro. So welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Salisbury, and this is The Professor is Live. And that's Rikko, our producer, right down in the corner. And today's episode hits on an important challenge. How do we adjust our legal systems to keep up with rapidly evolving technology?
Things are moving fast.
They certainly are, It's like trying to keep up with those TikTok trends. And so, I still don't understand why people dance while making guacamole.
It's kind of lost on me also.
Okay, to help us unpack this, we've invited Eran Kahana. He's an attorney and cybersecurity expert and scholar. And here's his big aha. Is society, well, I'm having trouble speaking today, Rikko. I guess I didn't warm up my tongue enough before we get started.
We can fix that in post.
Very good. Thank you. If society wants the benefits of new technology, we must be willing to evolve the legal frameworks around it. So here is Eran to share what he thinks about this. Welcome to The Professor is Live, Eran.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Well, as you know, today's show is based on a newspaper article about Ohio State Representative Thaddeus Claggett, who introduced a bill in the State House that would declare AI systems non-sentient entities and ban them from gaining legal personhood that would include holding power of attorney or making decisions on a person's behalf. And have you seen anything like this with the Minnesota State Legislature?
No, I have not, and I hope I don't. I have to say that these things are silly. I'm not a psychologist, so I'm not going to even pretend to engage into why lawmakers introduce these things. I know they're driven by committees because they inform the lawmakers themselves, and sometimes lawmakers have pet projects they get into. But ultimately, the whole idea here about the banning them because they're non-sentient, well, we don't know where this is going, but ultimately, I think there are indications, fairly good ones actually, if you, for example, listen to people like Kurzweil, who have I would say a really good track record of of predicting the future insofar as technology is concerned. And, predicting the future is tough, but Ray Kurzweil is one of those that has a really good track record on doing that. And I think that we will eventually, I believe this, based on what I've seen over 17 years of research at Stanford now into this area, we are reaching a point where the distinction between human and AI, and I'm not just even talk about the Turing test anymore. We're way beyond that. Will be
Yeah.
so blurred to the point where saying they're non-sentient as a fact will just simply be not true. And so that's why I say I think it's silly to it's a declarative type of statement that I don't think is necessary. I think lawmakers should spend more time looking at more important things than the non-sentient and type of legal inquiries.
Okay, well that's interesting, and that's kind of takes us to another place, but I think a good place in this interview. What do you think we should be thinking about in terms of legislation with our relationship with these intelligent programs?
Well, I would be one that says less is more. I would hate to see the misguided, energetic, but really sort of really misguided legislation that aims to basically say to the audience, to voters, really, look, we're doing something about this. You're all scared about it. So here we're doing something about it. So it's really more of a populist move than anything else. I don't think lawmakers understand, and I've been on committees that inform lawmakers, so I have a view of that, and it's not a good one, which is why I don't do it anymore. And it's one of those things that there's a knee-jerk reaction that informs these lawmakers, and so I'd rather have the emphasis be on maybe on the ensuring that we accurately explain what is AI literacy and put in programs in our schools, starting with first steps from K through 12, but starting at K, make sure that kids are brought into the world of AI in some sort, providing us some sort of a starting point, a common denominator with what is AI. There's this. It's almost a fetish. I was in Romania a couple of weeks ago, and I said there's almost a fetish with lawmakers, especially in the EU, to try to legislate everything about AI. And part of it is actually driven by the fear of AI. I get it. The science fiction dystopia has really done a number on everybody pretty much. But I think that we need to be more careful about this technology. We've never seen anything like this. We need to make sure we don't extinguish it.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to ask you about this because it seems to me, I teach this kind of stuff at the university, and I have my own students that use their own AI for trying to make them more productive. But, it strikes me that in one way is we can look at this as an extension of ourselves, right? And if we look at that, this proposed legislation in Ohio, it says that AI can't stand in and have power of attorney. But maybe another way of looking at this is we have all these communication forms, right? In the past, we've written things down like a will, and let's say that you had an interactive program that you've created that would actually express your wishes, after you've passed, right? So it could be your will. And Eran would say something like, I want these kinds of things to happen. I want my funeral to look this way. And people could ask that program, well, what about the clothes, or does he want flowers? And so if we thought of it as a communication form rather than you putting everything down, right, in a document, that we would think of this as an extension of you, not you yourself, but it would express your communication, in this case, a will. So how nutty of an idea is that?
I don't think it's nutty at all. I actually think there's no reason why not to have AI have a certain level of personhood. We have corporations; they're non-human, and they are granted legal personhood. I think the question is, and as I tell my students at the University of Minnesota Law School, where I teach the AI and law class, I say to them, the issue we need to answer is why or why not.
Yeah.
And I've not seen a well articulated reason why not. And also, to be fair, the why, yes. Why should it be? Um, but I think that's ultimately going back to your previous question. What should we be legislating? We should be legislating things that are clear, that have clear answers as to the why. Why are we doing this? What is the problem? And it's not just some fantasy that you have as a lawmaker. What is the problem that is well
Yeah.
articulated here? So going now to your more recent question, there is no problem. You could set up an avatar, design an agent, do it yourself. Vibe coding is pretty much available to anybody who bothers doing it, and set it up. And work with your whoever's setting up your will and your trust and your estate and all that stuff. So work with them to make it happen. Now, whether or not the courts will accept such a thing, maybe not in the immediate future, but I ultimately even see that changing. We are this legislation that comes forth with the sentient, for example, angle. It's short-lived because the technology is changing to the point where we are seeing that things are happening, for example, with deepfakes, right? Bruce Schneier spoke about 4 dimensions: speed, scale, scope, and sophistication relative to AI. These are dimensions that we do not control, and neither any legislator controls. And to think that we are going to draft legislation that is going to be able to keep up with what is happening is complete nonsense. So to the first question, I hope Minnesota never gets there.
Okay, very good. One of the things that may or may not be related to this that comes to the mind of people like me that have a little understanding of how the law really works, and we have dealt with this in another way before, like with animals. We'll see where somebody has left their estate to a cat, and I'm assuming the cat really isn't a person with all of the rights of regular people, but that cat is probably the guardian of someone. Is that true? And does that give us any insight in how we might deal with these intelligent machines as they evolve?
Absolutely. First of all, it's true. People are doing that without judging whether or not they should be or not. But people are doing that. So that really goes back to my earlier comment on the why. Why are we doing? Why should we allow this to happen? And so that's the why. People want it. People are doing it.
Yeah.
I think it's in 2010, I can't do the math, that's why I'm a lawyer. In 2010, I wrote a paper that I presented at Stanford for the Artificial Intelligence Advancement Institute. I can't remember they have a very long name. But I wrote about creating an avatar that protects our online identity and transacts on our behalf. And why not, right? So if you go back to the proposed legislation in Ohio, that would eliminate that potentially. Because it would have the power of attorney, it would have some of the other features that are proposed to be banned in the legislation. But the question is, why not? The technology exists. The legal structures are there to make our life easier, right? They're not to make somebody else's life, like legislators' life easier or to make them more popular. They're to make our life easier. And when the technology and the human interests intersect, you have the why, and this is the result. The AI should deliver that result for us.
Yeah. So, and that's a very practical way of looking at this and looking at the capabilities of these machines. And so, but one of the specters that comes up in my mind that shows you what's wrong with me is I can see in the future that, you have an estate and you have a lot of conflicting views on how that estate should be settled. And you end up having a cat suing an AI program over ownership of the estate. And I wonder, wow, how do we get there, or how do we avoid being there? So,
Well, I don't know that we want to avoid being there. There may be reasons to think way beyond the box, and we have a resistance as humans to say we always need to fix things or we need to regulate things in ways that we are used to. Even at some sort of an extrapolation, but it's really the traceability to the old law, or what I call the legacy law, is still there. Even when you think about copyright, we're trying to bend and contort copyright law to accept the reality of large language models and what they're doing. And maybe we need to rethink this completely. And I encourage my students, I say to them, let's think beyond anything we've ever seen. Don't rely on things we've seen. Let's bring new things to the fold. Not an easy thing to do, but I would suggest that I would like to, instead of saying we don't want to get there, we don't want to have this situation, I say, well, why not? Let's see what happens.
all right, very good. And I think that's the piece of wisdom and our takeaway that we'll want to end this with. So, Eran, I want to thank you for being with us today and adding some clarification to this issue.
Thank you very much, Mike.
And there you have it, Rikko. And so I've tried to put together some key insights from our conversation with Eran Kahana. And one of the things that strikes me about our show, and I'm not so sure it's actually a good thing, but sometimes I kind of view us as like a Columbo in the science area, right? And that we stumble along with our audience and we kind of come up with some things, some insights that perhaps we didn't really think of as we constructed this show. And what I mean by that, when we think about this particular subject we talked about today, about the rights and possibilities of machines, intelligent machines having something called personhood, when we think about that, we first kind of start off with someone who proposes this. And for most of us, it seems kind of ridiculous. But as we start talking through it, we realize where we're at in history is that we see that there's really another side to this, and there's another thing that we can learn. And so that's just my way of, Rikko, trying to say, I think we did good.
Well, which reminds me of another thing. Wasn't that his catchphrase?
Yes. Yeah, it is. It was in a movie sometime. Oh, man. Well, we won't go there. But what we will do is we'll try to wrap this up. And so one of the things is that technology is moving faster than our laws. So that's an obvious thing. Society must update our legal systems really to really match our tech realities. And somehow good governance, when we think about the big thing, how we create rules and laws for ourselves, we really want them to support innovation and safety. And so that finally brings us to, that's where we want to go. And so it's kind of like guardrails on the highway. You could still drive fast. I think I've actually heard you say this. You can still drive fast. You just won't go off the cliff. So we'll go there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, and it looks to me like people still need fundamental knowledge or foundational knowledge really to evaluate where we're going with these AI programs and their outputs. And so I think you had a saying about calculators or something that relates to this.
Well, I think that we all find the calculator very helpful, but I think it's important that we all know the numbers and what they mean.
Exactly. I knew you had a good saying when we were chatting about that. And then finally, I think that digital literacy is going to be essential in all this. And I know you had kind of a saying about this too, and I'd kind of forgotten it because I was thinking about what I'm saying.
Well, I think we just need to let things progress and be able to change with the times.
Yeah, exactly. All right, very good. That wraps up today's episode. And thanks to Eran Kahana for sharing his insights. And
thank you, Mark, for not leaving out Robbie the robot.
exactly. Well, no promise about that. Okay.
Yeah.
You can find more episodes and clips, right? Are unclear on the concept clips at theprofessorislive.com or on our Spotify page or our YouTube channel. And so that's it. Do you have any parting wisdom for us, Rikko?
Just let people know that that we're here, and if you have friends, let them know. If you don't have friends, work on it.
Exactly. And if you have people you really don't like at all, point them to our show. All right, that's it for this one. See you next time, folks.
The Professor is Live. Hosted by Mark Salisbury and produced by Rikko Smart. We go live on LinkedIn, then bring the conversation straight to you as a podcast. Catch us on YouTube or Spotify for full video episodes. Or listen anytime on your favorite podcast platform. Want the inside scoop on previous shows or a chance to bring The Professor is Live to your own event? Then head to theprofessorislive.com today. The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury, inspiring curiosity, laughter, and learning every week. Copyright 2025. The Professor is Live with Mark Salisbury.